I'm the Regional Secretary for South West, and I'm also Vice Chair of the South West TUC. And I tell you now, I've worked for a union for 20 years. I have never been prouder of our movement than I am today. Have heard that, because I understand that the reason you're all here is because militants, people like me, have told you to be here, and really you'd rather be at work. Is that the case? I didn't think so. So welcome to the Hall for Cornwall, welcome to November the 30th, and welcome to the biggest strike this country has seen for 85 years. And we were told this week that these union militants were just itching for a fight and there was no need for a strike at all. They do not understand the level of anger that public sector workers and their families and their communities feel about what is happening. And yesterday, the Chancellor's autumn statement, when he announced 2 more years of a pay freeze, 300,000 more jobs to go on top of the 400,000 that are already to go, 700,000 jobs in the public sector to go, 700,000 people to be thrown on the dole. Well, I tell you, George, if we weren't itching for a fight yesterday, we flipping well are today. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker. She's Alana. She's a young worker in Cornwall and part of the Cornwall Anti-Cuts Alliance. Let's hear it for Alana.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank you very, very much for your action today. A lot of brave people going on strike today, not just for you and for your pensions, but for everybody in this country who's suffering from the cuts. I'd like to send greetings from Cornwall Anti-Cuts Alliance and also from the private sector, which is where I work, and I'm getting sick of seeing on the television every time I see something about the public sector cuts, and they wheel on someone who says, oh, I work in the private sector and I don't have a pension, and why should people be going on strike? Well, I'd like to say that I work in the private sector, my pay is rubbish, I don't have a pension. Does that mean that I think that nobody else should have a decent pension? Does that not mean that everybody should have a decent pension? And we should all support people who are fighting for decent
We're going to be hearing a bit about what this pension dispute means to real workers in the public sector. We're going to ask Stuart to tell us about a few case studies.
These are all real workers, because we hear every day about gold-plated pensions of public sector workers. But this is about Sandra. Sandra's worked in local government for 34 years. Her job is to find work placements and apprenticeships for young people. And with youth unemployment rising, every new opportunity that Sandra can find is vitally important for those young people. Sandra isn't on a high wage. Like many, her household budget is coming under severe pressure, especially as she's trying to support her daughter whenever she can. Now Sandra is faced with having to pay hundreds of pounds more into a pension every year, only to be far worse off when she retires. It's just not fair. Sandra's going to be joining us today on strike. What this means to Sandra is that she'll be £413 a year worse off because of the government changes. She'll have to work longer, and when she gets to retirement, she's going to be £1,069 a year worse off because of the proposed change in the pension scheme. That's why we're all on strike today.
It's Jo Wright from the NASUWT. She's a Teacher and Equalities Officer. Thanks, Jo.
Yesterday, pupils asked me about the strike, and they told me that we were doing the right thing. Their parents had explained what the strike was all about, and the parents said, we're doing the right thing. My job is to educate children, to be a role model, to give a lead, and I believe that I am doing the right thing today. So let's stand together and defeat these plans. Let's force the government to think again, get back around the negotiating table and make a fair offer which guarantees teachers and all public sector workers the dignity and security that they deserve in retirement.
The next true testimony is from Tina. Tina's worked as a nurse for 27 years. She looks after outpatients at a local hospital and is proud to be part of the NHS. Tina isn't on a high wage, and with 2 children she keeps a tight rein on the purse strings. Now she's faced with having to pay hundreds more into her pension each year, even though she'll get back less each year in retirement. Tina is getting worried about how she's going to cope financially. It's just not fair, and Tina is going to be on strike with us today. She will be actually this is a nurse in an outpatient, she'll be £597 a year worse off because of the pension, the contribution increases, and when she comes to retire she'll be £1,275 worse off. This is a real person working in the NHS.
Okay, our next speaker is Pete Cogbill from PCS. Let's hear from Pete.
Good morning. The other interesting thing, financially, we need to bear in mind the average public sector pension is £5,600 a year. If you then add on the state pension, which gives us another £5,200, we've got £10,800 a year. That's actually less than the minimum wage for a 40-hour week, which is £12,646. So the average pensioner with an occupational pension and state pension gets less than the minimum wage. That can't be fair. On the average earnings of £25,000, which is what the government says is the average earnings these days, the average worker will pay an extra £8,000 over a 10-year period. They will then go into retirement and will lose something between £15,000 and £20,000 a year over the average 20 years of retirement. The basic state pension is currently £102 a week. The government says pension of poverty starts at £178 a week. Seems a bit strange to me, that one. There are 2.5 million pensioners in this country that have less than £178 a week to exist on. Most of them have to exist on means-tested benefits, without the benefit of occupational pension schemes. And those means-tested benefits actually cost this country £13 billion a year. If they paid us decent pensions, it would cost them less than that. They wouldn't need to pay the £13 billion.
I'm going to ask Stuart for our next case study.
Yeah, this is about Nicola. She works for the police service as a civilian, and she's a custody detention officer, and she's worked there for 21 years. Maybe I should say as well at this stage that we've had fantastic support from the police today, and they will be out with us on the march later on, but they've been really, really helpful, and I think if they are listening, if we could give them a round of applause. Nicola's worked as a custody detention officer for 21 years. It's a vital role in local policing, and she's proud to help to keep her community safe. Nicola isn't on a high wage, so she's already watching every penny of her household budget carefully. Now she's faced with having to pay money into her pension that she'll never see again. It's the equivalent of a complete grocery bill every month, and it will leave Nicola with a huge shortfall against what she thought she would receive in her retirement. Nicola doesn't think it's fair, and she's joining us all on strike today. What it means to her is that she'll be £68 less in her pay packet every month because of these pension changes. And when she comes to retirement, she's going to have £18,000 less in her pension fund on which her pension will be based on.
Okay, our next speakers are from UCU, and first I'd like to introduce Rob Gawthrop.
The autumn statement yesterday attacks the public sector even further. This is so that profit-making companies can take the benefit. Austerity is being used as a smokescreen to shift from a mixed economy to a neoliberal free market. Serco, whose work is 90% for the public sector, pays its CEO over £3 million a year, 300 times more than those at the bottom of the scale in the public sector. This is paid for by taxpayers. We in the public sector are taxpayers. We are not the tax avoiders. We serve the public. We are the public. We are the 99%, and if we all fight back, we will win. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Owen Harris from UCU as well.
I am the UCU chair of Cornwall College, which is a large corporation with 7 campuses. And the thing about what's happening is everything that we do and we believe in as educators is being destroyed around us. So I'm not on strike just for my pensions, I'm on strike for education. The thing about a day like this is we're not all here because it's me and mine, it's us and ours. Everything that we do and we believe in, from the schools we send our children to the ambulance workers or the policemen or the hospitals, is the foundation of this, the things we all believe in and that are important to us. And they're being eaten away day by day, and we're being forced to do things. The membership in unions is rocketing. There are thousands of people joining because they realise that this is fundamental. This is no longer just a little nibble here and a little nibble there. It's just being swept away. And if we don't stop now and fight, then we will lose it. It's only been in since, I mean, if you think since the Second World War, really, then socialism, and I know a lot of people don't like the word, but it is important. It came in, it gave us the National Health Service. It started looking after us, looking after the weak, looking after the poor. And that's the important thing. The wealthy can look after themselves, they always have done it and they always will. In further education, our remit is to look after the 16 to 18-year-olds. Having said that, we get everybody from 16 to 90-year-olds. Because in Cornwall, a vast amount of the students that we get are mature students, and they are now being cut out completely. They're forgotten, you know, all that about retraining and lifelong learning, that's been swept aside. And even the poor old 16 or 18-year-olds, they're getting less time for their courses, they've had their EMA taken away from them, they're getting a second-rate deal, and yet we're all going through Ofsted and everything's tickety-boo. It's a complete whitewash. And so that's